Hey everyone, welcome to PunkCast. My name is William Maxwell. I'm a student of Web3 and the owner of Punk2098. Cryptopunks are 10,000 uniquely generated characters stored permanently on the Ethereum blockchain. No punk is the same. This is a show dedicated to celebrating the punks behind the punk. My hope for this podcast is that we capture the essence of the punk culture, elevate the brand and the individual behind the punk. One last thing. Projects discussed on the show is not financial advice. Crypto and NFTs are a volatile and risky asset class. Please always do your own research. Other than that, let's go. Hi everyone, welcome back to another episode of PunkCast. Today we've got Punk2098. He's a Atty with a manly luxurious beard and dark mohawk hair. He's an award-winning filmmaker creating the first ever European movie to be funded via NFTs. The film is called Calladita. Please welcome my Spanish brother from another mother, Migeul Faus. Hola, Miguel.
Hi, all good. Thank you. Thanks for having me. This is exciting.
Great, mate. So where are you based now, and sort of what have you been up to lately?
I'm based in London, and yeah, as you said, I'm a filmmaker, and I've been up to making my first feature-length movie, Calladita, which is, as you said, the first European movie to be funded by NFTs.
Awesome.
So it's kept me busy for a while. First, fundraising with the whole NFT strategy, and then finally actually making the movie.
Amazing. Well, we'll definitely unpack Calladita a little bit more as we sort of go through the interview. But maybe we can just have a bit of an introduction, I guess, to you and your background and what brought you into, I guess, filmmaking and obviously into sort of NFTs.
Yeah, for sure. So I've kind of always been a filmmaker since my teens. I started making movies with my friends and etc. So that's like my my thing kind of forever. But then in terms of NFTs, it was kind of by accident that I found them. I guess like many people, I was at that time I was a struggling filmmaker in the pandemic, trying to get my project Calladita off the ground, seeing how that was ever gonna be possible, which seemed difficult. Um, and and it was during COVID, so we were locked down, and I remember I read a tweet about crazy people buying, cat JPEGs for thousands of dollars. I think that those were crypto kitties at the time. This was in February 2021 or January, and I don't know. It was for some reason that I can't comprehend, and it changed my life. So I mean, I'm very grateful, but I don't know why I clicked on the links and I read the articles, because like 9 out of 10 times I would just think, oh, these people are crazy and move on, right? And do something else. But it caught my attention and I read a few articles, and then I was hooked. Once I read a few in-depth articles that went into the tech and into the revolution that was possible through digital ownership, uh, I was hooked. I saw it very clearly and very instinctively that this was the future. I personally had always my background before going to film school. Mm, I went to business school, so I was I was trained in business, and I have kind of a business mindset at times, and with that I had always been very aware of how mistreated creators were by the internet in general, or how badly set up the internet was for creators, even though we say that Web2 is based around the creator economy a lot. It's more, it's more well, it's definitely a creator economy, but it's very um, unbalanced and not fair at all. So so yeah, I read those articles and I was like, yeah, this is the future for sure. I'm hooked, and I started hanging out on Clubhouse all day, learning a lot, being onboarded by many people, a few of them punks, and started also collecting and investing. And my first NFTs that I ever collected, that was in March 2021, were a punk that was not 2098 but a previous one, and and a squiggle. I remember I put most of my savings into those two NFTs. Mostly the punk was because I saw that everyone that made sense in Twitter and in Clubhouse rooms, everyone that seemed OG and seemed to know what they were talking about and was kind of wise about this whole revolution, were punks.
Mm.
So I stupidly thought that the wisdom came with the punk, which I then discovered was not true. Uh, but the network and the I don't know. I mean, the digital identity that definitely does come with the punk in many ways,
Mm. Absolutely.
and yeah, it was. I never looked back.
Absolutely. And mate, so there's a lot of things you sort of mentioned there, and I'd like to sort of unpack elements of it, but maybe you can take us back a little bit further into. I think you said you had a business degree, and then you found your way into content creation
Yeah.
and making films. What was it for you? I mean, was that a big transition for you? What was the decision process there? Like, what was going through your mind
Mm.
when you made that transition?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the weird thing. That's why I said I've always been a filmmaker, because I was already making short films way before I went to film school, to uh, business school. So kind of the weird part of my journey was business school rather than film school. It wasn't like
Uh,
I was always following a normal path and then one day I decided to go to film school. I was always kind of a filmmaker, and but then when in Spain, higher education is highly specialized. So it's not like in the States where you go to university and you kind of study whatever you want. It's very general and it's very broad, and then you sort of decide your path later. In Spain, kids at 18 are forced to choose a very specific path, right, for their education that then determines what they will do in the future. And so when that happened for me, that was 2010. It was one of the worst years of the Spanish financial crisis, and I guess I was scared as an 18-year-old. I didn't have the courage to just to go make movies and go study film, because it seemed like a very uncertain future. And so I went to business school instead and thought, movies will just be my hobby. But in 4 years they didn't manage to cure me at business school. So then right after, like already during business school, I continued to make movies and be a film critic, etc. And then right after that I went to film school in London, and here we are.
and what type of films and genres were you sort of making before Calladita? Like, what was your interest?
Well, I've mainly made short films, and I'm not a very prolific filmmaker. I've made very few films because I'm very um, self-demanding, and I focus a lot when I make a film, and I want it to be great. So I don't make too many. Mm, so yeah, Calladita started as a short film that I made in 2019. So for the last 4 years, all I've made is, or like last, yeah, almost 4 years, all I've made is Calladita, short film and then feature. And then before that, I made another short film called The Death of Don Quixote, which is more of a drama, but it's a film within a film. So it's about filmmaking. And yeah, that's another interesting short that won a few awards and did a very good festival run.
Amazing. Okay, so then maybe you can maybe just give us a an overview, an introduction to Calladita,
one about, I guess, the story and the film that you're trying to build, and then two, I guess, about the project itself, because I think that's pretty interesting in terms of how you sort of structure that
Yeah,
up.
for sure. Um, so yeah, the film, as I said, started as a short film that I made in 2019. It was my graduation film from film school, from the London Film School, and it's about a domestic worker from Latin America that works for a very rich family in Spain, in the Costa Brava, during the summer. And the kids in the family are around her age, like early 20s, and live very different lives, of course. And while they enjoy the summer, she cleans their shit, um, quite literally. And then the short film is just a day in her life and a moment in that life where she tries a different path of rebellion. And the feature film covers the whole summer. Uh, we enter this luxurious house with her at the beginning of the movie, and then stay all the summer with her. And it's a story of female liberation and empowerment within this context of very stark class differences and inequalities. It's a kind of a character study drama, but it has some satirical touches as well. It's a satirical portrait of the bourgeois world of Spain. And right now we are in post production. We shot the movie in Spain in September, and as I say, it was all funded with an NFT collection. So yeah, I mean, I can kind of go back to the beginning of how that whole thing happened. Here in Europe, the way movies like Calladita, which is let's say an author-driven movie, well, basically most movies in Spain in Europe, if they're not sequels or they're not um, you know very simple comedies that are super commercial, or a handful of other kinds of films, most films are tend to be more author driven, and then if that's the case, they are generally funded with public money mostly. So the way that, at least in Spain, which is the market that I know, movies get made is by there's a script and there's a project, and then you need an established production company to pick up the project in order to try and finance it. Um, and try and finance it means just presenting it mostly to the public TVs and the public funding bodies. Um, but it's very random and very weird because there's a bottleneck. So there's only a handful of production companies that have enough track record for the Spanish government to give them money to make movies, but they have too many projects, right? So what would happen to me with Calladita when I was trying to fund it as my first movie? Producers would be like, "Oh yeah, yeah, we love this movie. It's great. Love the script. We will present it to the Spanish funding body in 3 years because we already have projects for this year and next and 2 years from now." So it's a waiting game, and it's super random and kind of pointless, to be honest. So I was trying to find alternative ways to fund this and to get it made. And I felt like my life as a filmmaker couldn't start until I got this project off the ground and greenlit. So yeah, in parallel to all of this, separate to all of this, I stumbled upon NFTs, like I explained before, and I was kind of for a few months there. I was a struggling filmmaker by day and a DJ by night, right? um, and at some point it just clicked to me that there would be a chance to join these two industries, and at the time I hadn't seen anything in the whole space related to cinema. And I thought, yeah, actually, to be honest, it was also related to a punk, Tony Herrera, which who some people call the godfather of punks because he's a very OG figure in the punk space, punk claimer, and and also because of what I'm gonna explain now, he's a guy that is always trying to give a helping hand and trying to onboard people and connect with punks in a very helpful way. So he reached out to me and was interested in doing something with Calladita, the short film, which we didn't end up doing. But in our conversations, this idea came up that Tony suggested, hey, but if you want to make a feature, why don't you fund it through NFTs or through Web3? And there were a lot of ideas thrown around, but then eventually what sticked was a kind of a crowdfunding campaign with an NFT collection mm, made from the short film. So all of the assets are still frames or videos from the short film, and it's structured kind of similar to a Kickstarter, to be honest, where there's different tiers of rewards and utilities depending on how much you spend to support the movie, and 100% of the mint proceeds go to the budget of the movie. And we launched that in March 2022, this past March, and we managed to raise around $650,000 for the movie, and made history by making the first European movie ever to be funded by NFTs.
Yeah, I did actually have Tony Herrera on PunkCast as well. He is I love the guy, super OG as well.
Yeah.
Mate, so that's so fascinating. I think maybe maybe you can take me back a little bit in terms of, was it really Tony Herrera that was the I guess the key influencer for you to decide and get to give you the confidence to pursue a sort of a crowdfunding campaign? Because I mean, I'm sure there would have been a lot of complexities around it too, in terms of who's going to build the smart contracts, how are you going to sort of do this, how do you sort of design the
Oh,
product?
yeah, that
Like, what was that sort of journey like for you?
that was a very long journey, I would say. It's a very steep learning curve, and nobody had ever done this. So, just kind of workshopping the idea and deciding on a strategy and thinking how I was gonna do it took many months, and then also finding the team and putting the whole project together, budgeting it, paying for it. Thankfully, I had done well with a few flips and I could afford um, this whole project. But I did need to spend to invest a lot of money into the
Mm.
crowdfunding project before ever putting a dollar in the movie, right? So it was definitely tough, and I mean, I think that's just a product of being too early
Mm.
and doing this thing for the first time. I'm very bullish that NFT crowdfunding is gonna be a big thing, and I think it's gonna be so much easier for creators in the coming months and years, where there's just gonna be an easy platform like Kickstarter, but it's gonna be Web3, and it's gonna allow you to sell NFTs to crowdfund, and it's gonna just charge you like 1.5 or 2.5%, and it's gonna make the whole thing so simple.
Yeah, absolutely. Super interesting as well. And so, like, when I think when you spoke about the actual Calladita project, there were different tiers. Could you talk about the
Hmm.
utility of it, or is it just a collectible? Like, how are you sort of looking at these tiered NFTs? Uh,
Yeah, no, yeah, all of them have different utilities. So there's four tiers in the collection. We haven't closed the mint yet or sold out, so it's still active and minting because the movies are expensive and it still needs a bit more of a push to finish it. Um, so there's tier one. There's 2,300 of those, and it's 0.18 ETH, and that's the only one that's still available. The other ones have sold out. And tier one, which is the most basic tier, allows the utility that it has is a private link to watch the film once we finish it, and then your name or ENS is credited in the credits of the movie as a thank you, and you have access to a private Discord where we've been giving a very unique behind the scenes experience as we were making the movie. And then, just as everyone else, you get governance over the upcoming Calladita DAO. This is the DAO is the way that we found in order to be able to share the success of the movie with our holders. Because of securities laws, we can't offer a direct revenue share to our holders in the process of the movie, but we can enable them to decide on what is done with those processes. So now, once the film is finished and goes into the world, we will set up a DAO, and the DAO will get 50% of the net profits of the movie in perpetuity. And everyone that supported Calladita becomes a member of the DAO and has voting power over what is done with that treasure. So hopefully, if the movie does well, the DAO can become a small decentralized film studio in Europe, supporting future film NFT projects. Um, yeah, and then as you go up in, sorry, go ahead.
What are some possible use cases do you think that the treasury could be used for? Um,
Um, I mean, it depends on the size of the treasury, but certainly funding other films would be a very direct use case, and a very and great
hmm,
one.
that'd be super cool. And then
Mm.
would you also have, I guess, so you basically crowdfund, but would you also have any participation from the community in terms of some of the decisions that need to be made on the movie, in terms of um,
Mm.
casting, scripts, etc. Which ones should be
Mhm.
prioritized, or the possibilities could be
Mm.
endless, right? Um,
Yeah, definitely. I personally didn't do that for Calladita because I didn't feel like I needed it or wanted it at that time. But yeah, I think there's a very interesting chance there to use the community to make certain decisions or to validate certain decisions. So yeah, definitely very open to exploring that.
Awesome. And just in terms of the tiers that you have of the NFTs, the high that the ranking
Oh
of the
yeah.
NFTs, does that give you different governance voting powers?
That's still undecided, and lots of different people in the community have different opinions. Uh, I'm leaning more towards yes, voting power being weighted to exactly how much you
Mm.
spend, essentially. Um, so the more you spend, the more power you have, which just equated to share in a company, and to me seems reasonable because that's the whole reason why the
Mm.
DAO exists, right? It's to substitute
Mm.
a share. Um, we can't give you a share in the revenue, so we give you this voting mechanism, and so I think it should be weighted in that way.
Awesome. Well, mate, I'm excited to see what comes out of it, and looking forward to watching Calladita. How far are you away
Thank you.
from launching? Do you think?
It's gonna be a while. So right now we are editing the movie, and that will finish around
Mm.
March next year. The whole post production process. So in March or April, the movie will be done. But then the way it works is these movies shine in film festivals, and so you want to wait for a very big world premiere at a big festival. There's around 10 to 15 of those very festivals internationally, and so they have their calendar, and so you submit and hope for the best, and then so the movie will only premiere once we get accepted into one of these festivals. So that could be I don't know, like September 2023 in Toronto, or it could be March 2024 in South by Southwest, to give you two examples. So it's kind of not up to us at that point.
And so Miguel, when you look at, I guess, the model that you sort of starting a design for in terms of crowdfunding, I guess your own projects. How much different do you think that is from, or how much different do you feel that is from, I guess, the old Web 2 version? Do you feel like it adds a lot more flexibility in terms of editing, scripting, etc.? I sort of feel like in the old world, money isn't for free, and so they probably have a degree of control and over, I guess, the direction of the piece that you're sort of working on. Do you feel like it offers a lot more creative freedom for you in terms of this?
I mean, when I speak to my peers in the States, that's mostly what they focus on. In the US, the sector is a lot more private, so there's much less public money, and so if you're an indie filmmaker, the way that your movie gets made is not by the state picking it up, selecting it, and giving you funding, but just private producers funding it or financiers, and so they will take some degree of creative control away from the filmmaker, and so the best benefit that they see in Web3 is regaining that creative control for the movies. In Europe, that's not exactly the case. For example, Final Cut in Europe is kind of the norm. So in the States, it's weird for a director to get Final Cut, and that's very weird to us in Europe. That I'll explain what that means in case someone doesn't know. That means that the director gets final decision on what goes in or out of the movie and how it's edited and everything that relates to what you see in the movie. In Europe, that's a given that the director has final control and final say because he's the author. But in the States, it's quite rare. It's only some top directors like Tarantino who get to put the right to final cut in their contracts. So yeah, that agency and creative control is very important in the States. Here in Europe, it's less important because if Calladita had been made the traditional route, I would still have creative control. It would just it's more of a it goes beyond or above creative control. It's control of actually making the thing, right? So it's agency towards the artists being able to greenlight themselves rather than have external funding bodies pick them and greenlight them.
And so talking about creative control, then I think after Calladita, do you have a pipeline of projects that you're thinking about after Calladita?
Um, no, I just have one project that I keep thinking about and that I think I want to make after Calladita. Although Calladita will still take mm, almost like a year or more to kind of for me devoted to it. Um, but yeah, the thing I'm thinking about is a
A
Western
Western.
next.
Cool.
Yes.
I'll be looking forward towards
Mhm.
that. Maybe if I could make a request as well, maybe we can make one on a documentary on Cryptopunks or the whole NFT space. I think there's much needed, right?
Yeah,
I think just the last sort of 12 to 18 months has been a crazy ride and a lot of different characters in the space. Um, the-
yeah, for sure. There's a few great documentary projects on the space that are going to be coming out soon. I'm
Absolutely.
excited for that. Um, a fellow punk, Dancicles, is making one or has made one new here, which I'm very excited
Nice.
about.
Exciting stuff, Miguel. And then maybe if we go, turn the conversation back to
Mhm.
your first NFT, and I think you said it was a different CryptoPunk from the one that you have now. Um, when did you
Yeah,
buy that? Do you remember?
yeah. I think it was early April
Early April 2020.
2021 or late
Yeah,
March. I'm not
and
sure.
that was your first one. So that was. Do you know what? Do you remember
It
what
was 16 ETH.
three ETH? Wow. Do you remember the
No, 16,
16 ETH?
16.
So that's still pretty early. And do you remember what traits
Yeah.
you had?
Um, it had glasses, but the normal glasses, not shades, not sunglasses, and it had the that I don't know how it's called. It's that hair that it's kind of like a pyramid, but it's cut at the top. It's like
The
triangle. I don't
peak
know
the
what it's
peak
called.
hair, or
Uh,
unless you're talking about the vampire hair. Okay,
maybe.
cool.
No, yeah, I guess it's big hair because it's not
Okay,
it's not the vampire, no. Um, and then it had a mole
nice.
also, which kind of hurt its clarity or its
Yeah,
aesthetic or whatever. But yeah, I bought it for 16 ETH, and at that time I hadn't built any identity around it or anything. And I was very set on owning a CryptoPunk, but I didn't care about what specific CryptoPunk at that time. So I bought that and put it for sale at 40% more, and it sold in two
wow.
days. So it was like I feel like a genius. I really don't know what happened, and then after that, it didn't do so well. That punk, I've been following that punk, and it didn't do so well. But yeah, I sold for a big profit, and then I bought 2098, which then just stayed in my wallet for forever. It
Mm,
became my forever punk, and used the other profits to buy other JPEGs and continued my
amazing.
degenerate journey.
Maybe just let's just talk through, I guess, your current punk 2098, who's now your identity in Web3.
Yeah.
He's got the luxurious beard and the
Hmm.
mohawk, dark mohawk hair. What was, I guess, the decision process in that? Were you looking at different traits, or were you sort of set on this one in particular?
No, I mean, I was looking around the floor. But this wasn't floor at the time. I think the floor was 16, and I bought it for 18. So I did pay a bit of a markup. I think at the time, I mean, I was still very unsophisticated. I didn't know too much about punks and what made them valuable. But this one looked cool,
Yeah.
and also it looked punk, and that felt kind of important to me. If there if and I mean, it's a bit of a weird argument, and that's not something that I would value right now if I'm a punk. But at the time, I was like, if they're called CryptoPunks, shouldn't they look like punks? No? Shouldn't
Yeah.
they be punk? And so yeah, I went for the
Nice.
2098,
And
which doesn't look like
but
me
he's
at
a cool
all.
punk. It looks like a hard, mean, heavy hitting dude. And when you
Yeah,
just come back a little bit too, I think you spoke about um, getting into Clubhouse and sort of noticing around the space, other crypto punks felt like they were the OGs, and it sort of signaled something to you as well. I
hmm,
guess in terms of what was your thinking process, and
yeah,
why did you feel compelled to buy a punk at that point in time, especially your first punk? I mean, that was a relatively sizable capital outlay, right?
yeah. I guess I read a few things at the time as well. Maybe the Fat CryptoPunk thesis, and some threads by, I don't know, maybe G Money or 4156 or people like that who were thought opinion leaders at the time. Um, I'm trying to put myself back in those days and remember how I
Mm,
felt or what I thought. But I think it was just very clear at that time that
mm,
punks were craze, right? So like, if yeah, I don't think, like, at the time there wasn't. I don't. I don't remember there being much of an alternative, if you know what I mean. Like, if you wanted to invest sizably, like 20,000 euros into an NFT, you bought a punk, um, or at least that's how I remember it, right?
so was it more of a financial play for you then, as
They,
opposed to
uh, yes, but no. So it's weird. Like, I mean, it was definitely a financial play because I invested most of my
Mm,
net worth
mm,
in it. Um, But weirdly, it wasn't like, oh yeah, I'm gonna buy this because then it's gonna double and I'm gonna sell it for a profit or something like that. It was more like I was so convinced that this was the future and that I wanted to be part of this future that I just wanted to put my money where my mouth was and really be a part of it, not a spectator. So it was like I already had this instinct that I'm gonna be here for years to come, and that this investment, even though it's very sizable right now, it's not gonna matter in the long run. It's not, it's not. I don't know how to explain it, but it's not like I'm gonna 5x and I'm gonna sell it
Yeah.
and be done with it. It's a thing that
So it was a form of, you had a fair bit of conviction in Web3 and you wanted to be in the space, and a punk was a good way
Yeah.
of signaling, I guess, your seriousness around Web3 and your commitment to it, which is kind of cool.
100%.
And then I guess you've got your punk as your profile identity at the moment. I guess what does this sort of mean for you to rock a CryptoPunk as your identity? I mean, you could choose different profile pictures and stuff like that, but and it's been a while as well since you've had the punk. What does it sort of mean for you as a profile picture?
Yeah, I think it's now it's become my digital identity for sure, and that's just a thing that has happened, and I can't control it. I guess, I mean, it definitely helps in the Web3 space, right? I guess a lot of people decide to follow me just because they see a punk, and they might think that I'm a very big collector, though I'm not really, or they might think that I'm OG, which, compared to most people in the space, I am, even though I would feel ashamed to call myself OG amongst the real OGs, right? But there's different grades of OG, and I'm the early 2021 class, which has now become kind of OG. So yeah, it's like a signaling thing, really, in the space. I'm not anon, so it's not useful in that respect, right? It's not helping me hide my identity, but still have a face, which it does for a lot of people, and it's another very useful use case. But in my case, it's more about a very instinctive and very direct signal that I'm a legend, and that I believe in this space enough to have a lot of money
Yes.
invested in it,
Yeah.
and yeah, and that I kind of, I'm not ashamed to show that, right? So like, if, like, let's say I, how to put it, like, if someone who's not in the space sees that, they're gonna be um, maybe surprised or weirded out or whatever. They're gonna, but I'm signaling to them, oh yeah, I'm a weirdo. This is what I do. I'm a DJ, and so it's a commitment thing.
Awesome. And so, like, I think you mentioned you got Chromie Swiggles, and I think you've got some art blocks. I've just got your vault open, Me Bits and Ringers as well, which is a pretty cool collection. I guess the question for you is, what do you like collecting the most, and why do you collect?
I think, well, during 2021, I was collecting most PFP projects that were taking off. I I've had, you know gutter cats, cool cats, of course, like Clone X that I still have, or like mutant apes, bored apes, MFers, moonbirds, whatever was actually, taking off. I would generally collect, and that was more of a flipper investor mindset, right? Because it, at initially I thought it was cool to be part of all of these communities, but then I eventually learned that you can't really be a part of so many communities. So I'm mostly a punk. I own other NFTs, but I'm not a Moonbird, you know. I have a Moonbird, but I'm a punk. Um, and so now that I guess my approach has become a bit more sophisticated just by sheer time. Um, and also I've sold a few NFTs due to the bear market and stuff. I guess I like to collect things that I have a long term plan for. Either they are great artworks like a ringer that I want to hold on until it's worth $1 million at least, um, or it's a PFP project that I believe in for the long run, right? Like for example, two like or three PFP companies that I believe in for a longer period of time might be Yuga Labs and Proof and Artifact, right? So those three I still keep. Well, I don't have a Bored Ape, but I have a Mutant Ape because I sold my Bored Apes. But you know, those are kind of utility-based PFPs that I still believe that the companies might deliver more in the future, and so there's upside there. No, so I guess I don't know. Like my big thing in the space is punks, to be honest. So like now that I'm trying to rationalize my wallet, I find that it's hard. Like I should probably just rotate everything to punks, and that would be easier for
So,
me to
why do you
rationalize.
say that? Just out of curiosity.
Um, I guess it's just punks are the NFT that I believe in the most for sure, uh, both financially and culturally. And then secondly, it really bugs me that I only have one punk because it's weird. Like I can never sell it, right? Or it's gonna be so hard to ever sell it. So even if punks rally to $1 million, what I'm gonna be identityless? I'm gonna be punkless. That
Absolutely.
would feel so weird. It's more of a liability than an asset, in my opinion.
Definitely. I sort of, I mean, what you sort of said resonates with me, right? I think, especially in the bear market, you start looking at things now, and I mean, I just feel a lot more comfortable with punks because when you're just not worried about any central entity trying to accrue and deliver value for it. Punks are just going to be punks, right? Similar for Chromis Figures and the artworks as well.
Yeah,
I think there's always delivery risk for the other stuff, right? If you're relying on central teams to accrue value back to holders. So yeah, with you, I mean, punks are just comfy, right?
yeah,
Super comfy. And so
yeah.
if you look back at your, I guess, your NFT career to date, you know, what's your best win or loss that sort of comes to mind? Anything worth mentioning?
Mm, yeah, for a long time there, I always told the story that my biggest win was also my biggest loss because I minted a Fidenza and sold it for 10 ETH 3 weeks later, or 12 ETH, I don't remember. So of course it was a what? I'm trying to make it like it was more than a 50x, right? It was
Was it?
insane.
Was it a Dutch
I minted
auction
it
back
for
then for a
what?
Fidenza?
No. It was
Oh
flat. I
wow,
think it was point
yeah,
0.2 ETH, if I remember correctly. So
it's
it
insane.
was a 50x. Uh,
Mm.
yeah, or 60, something like that. But it's still, but they ride very quickly after that. So I sold it in 3 weeks for 50x, but 2 months later they were 100 ETH or 80
Yeah.
ETH or something crazy like that. And ETH was at 3,000, so
Mm.
that was life changing money for me. But then it wasn't, right? So it definitely
Mm.
hurt for a long time. Um, but with that 10 ETH, I bought a couple Bored Apes that then I sold near the top. So if you stay long enough in the game, you have losses, but you also have wins, right? So
Absolutely.
it's okay.
No, I think Fidenza is in everybody's list, a Grail list for sure. Cool. And then when you look across, I guess the Twitter space, do you have a favorite punk personality that comes to mind?
I don't think so. I don't think that one, but there's so many punks that I admire, and I've loved meeting so many different people thanks to punks. And
So
it's
which
just
it
cool,
is
such a
like
cool
which
community.
which names come to mind if it's not just one? Like who would you put up there as your favorite punks?
Uh, Let me think. I have to think for a moment. Um, I mean, Tony for sure is one of the top of my mind as someone who embodies a lot of the values of punks better than anyone else. Um, then a lot of great artists whom I admire are punks like Justin Naversano or Claire Silver or Snowfro. Mm, and G Money is also comes to mind as someone who is a great leader in the space and also a great guy to meet. I've had the pleasure of hanging out with him a couple of times, and he's a great guy. Um, but yeah, I don't know.
No,
Those are some of the people that come to mind. But then also more anonymous people that aren't big influencers or big artists or aren't famous in the space but are still you know awesome punks to meet. And so almost every punk that I've ever met, I would wanna meet them again for a beer
absolutely.
and long chat, etc.
And just out of curiosity, where do you normally meet up with punks? Are they sort of ad hoc sort of meetups, or do you go to some events to meet up with punks?
Luckily, in the last few months, it's become a thing to do punk meetups at different Web3 conferences or events. So that's been great. But then I also try to do impromptu meetups. I organized the first London Punks meetup like a year ago. I started a group chat and we started bringing people. We're like 40 now, UK based punks in that group chat. So it's great. And also, for example, in March, this March, I went to New York for a quick visit for some work, and I knew a couple of punks that lived there, and I just texted them and said, "Hey, I'm gonna be in New York in a couple of weeks. Let's just do a punk meetup." And so we organized a punk dinner, and there was like 15 of us, so it's great. It's awesome to feel like you have a friend in every city almost.
No, that's nice. That's really nice. Did you say there's 40 punks in London? Wow, that's a lot.
Yeah, or in the UK, yeah, for
Um,
sure.
Cool. And then when
Yeah.
if you had to describe punk culture in a few words, how would you describe it?
I mean, I think punk culture is a lot about crypto culture, right? OG crypto culture. So, decentralized, permissionless, um, and self custody and all of those important values. But also beyond that, NFT OG culture, which to me distills down to cultural ownership. So, how ownership gets introduced into the digital realm, and that changes the game, changes the rules of the
I think
game.
that's a good way of putting it too. I think I do get a sense of real OG crypto culture and really valuing, I guess, the true Ethereum value set. freedom, counterculture, independent,
Yeah.
etc. as well. So which is kind of cool. And if you could pass on a message to the next owner of your punk, what would you like to say to them?
I guess. Hello, son. It's very hard for me to imagine someone outside of my family ever owning
It's
2098.
a pretty common response now as well. It's always to be passed down into the generations, which is a beautiful thing, I guess. Awesome. So,
Yeah.
Miguel, that was a fun conversation. I guess any sort of final comments
Thank you.
from you? Anything that you sort of would like to ask? I guess from the community before we sort of close off.
No, it was great to chat. Thank you. And no, all good.
All good. And how can sort of people find you and connect with you, and also learn more about your film?
So I'm always on Twitter. So the best way to connect with me is on Twitter, Migeul Faus. And there's a Calladita page on Twitter as well. It's a bit quiet now because we are building, we're in post production and finishing this movie for everyone to watch. But we'll sure have great updates coming shortly.
Awesome. So I'll definitely include them into the show notes.
Brilliant.
And so no, this is super fun, and always love chatting with punks and learning a lot more about what they're sort of doing. And I think we've just got a really cultural and diverse skill set within our community. I mean, you're coming from the sort of the film angle into sort of NFTs, which is a beautiful thing too. And I'm looking forward to seeing what comes out of next, and when Calladita sort of launches as well. And so best of luck to you, and wish you all the best.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you so much for the interview, and all the best to you as well.
Thanks, Miguel. And guys, that wraps up an episode of PunkCast for the weekend. We'll be back next week with another episode. Bye for now.